Welcome to the Legal Leaders Podcast, brought to you by LawVu, LawVu's community for in-house legal professionals. LawVu's mission is to accelerate the evolution of the in-house legal profession, and with this podcast, we showcase modern legal leaders from across the globe. We explore their unique journeys and how they're driving the transformation of our new profession. Join David Lancelot, LawVu's Chief Legal Officer and Executive Vice President of Advocacy, as he explores the cutting edge of in-house legal leadership. This is the Legal Leaders Podcast.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the Legal Leaders Podcast. I'm David Lancelot, your host today, the CLO and EVP Advocacy at LawVu. And I have the great pleasure to have with me today Fred Struve, who is the General Counsel of Lunit International. Thank you for joining us, Fred.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here, David.
And where are you coming to us from today?
I'm joining you from Copenhagen, Denmark.
Where it is, I imagine, quite cold in the middle of winter.
It is. We've had a very lovely winter landscape the last few days, but that's what happened here. It's warming up and turning to slush now.
Right. Well, it's funny because we're in California and we think 40 degrees Fahrenheit is absolutely freezing, right? And I had a quick look at the Copenhagen weather and I was like, oh my,
yeah,
we would not survive. There'd be a lot of frozen Californians in that kind of weather. So Lunit and we met, Fred, I think via TechGC initially, right?
Right.
A few years ago when you were based in the US. And I really thought it would be worth bringing your story to our audience because, there are a lot of people who are interested in international roles, a lot of people who are interested in healthcare, health tech, and you're absolutely sort of a role model in that area. I think you have a super interesting background. So now you're at a company called Lunit, based in Copenhagen. We met in San Francisco. Maybe start with what Lunit does for the audience.
Sure. Thank you. So Lunit makes AI medical device software that both within breast cancer screening, chest abnormalities, and precision oncology. We're brought together two companies. So there's Lunit Inc., which is based out of Seoul, South Korea. The company was started about 10 years ago. And then the part of business that I joined in with was formerly known as Volpara Health. And we're a company founded in Wellington, New Zealand, about 15 years ago. And we're independent and listed on the Australian Stock Exchange until about a year and a half ago when we were acquired by Lunit.
Wow. Yes. So a tremendously valuable purpose. I don't think anybody would argue with cancer screening and et cetera as being about as valuable as it gets for a company purpose. And also, I can't think of another company that has that kind of international sort of setup. You know what I mean? Like you hear about all kinds of stuff, but you don't often hear about Korean, New Zealand with GC in Denmark.
Yeah.
So maybe how did that happen? How did the Kiwi company end up with the Korean company?
So longer story, perhaps. The Volpara Health was one of the pioneers within the breast cancer screening space for AI, and we started with a product for volumetric breast density assessment, which is actually not used as much in New Zealand, but has a large market in the United States. And so Volpara early on made headway in the U.S. market and built out a large customer base there. And I joined Volpara after it made its initial acquisition of a U.S. company up in Seattle. And they realized they had quite a few U.S. employees now and a very large U.S. customer base and probably needed some help day-to-day with legal matters as well. And so we grew the company from there, did an additional acquisition. We did a turnaround from being a growth stage company to a break-even profitable company. And that made us attractive to other businesses in our space, including Lunit, who themselves at that time were looking at an expansion into the American market and saw Volpara as offering a large install base, in addition to access to a data strategy that we had executed that was valuable for future product development. And so we were a New Zealand company. We were listed in Australia. It was an interesting M&A process to execute. And so it took about 9 months, I think, from start to end, before we then became part of the Korean group overall. There's definitely a lot of time zones involved in my day-to-day work. I
Yes.
I was based in America, which is easier. It's, and it's between 3 to 5 hour time difference to New Zealand, 7 to 8 to Korea. But then returned to Copenhagen, to Denmark, where I'm originally from, in July last year, to be closer to family and to give our kids the opportunity to learn that side of their culture and get really good at the language.
Wow. Yeah. So does that mean that you've been to both New Zealand and Seoul for work?
Yes. Yeah. So one of the privileges I have is that I do get to travel quite a bit, and it's absolutely necessary as well when you have our leadership spread out primarily between Seattle, Wellington, and Seoul, that you do get together in person. And so I think last year I managed to get to New Zealand once and Seoul a couple of times, and Seattle as well, of course. And I have both trips coming up again here in the next few weeks as well.
Right on. That must be a really interesting mixture of cultures between Korean, Kiwi, U.S., and now, pan-European, I guess you'd say. But that is a fascinating mixture of cultures. I can't say I've done a ton of business in Korea, but of course, LawVu is originally a Kiwi company, so plenty of that at the moment, and plenty of U.S. of course, and Europeans. But that's fascinating. I mean, I would love to see the culture map of that matrix there.
We have done them. They are very interesting. We try to be very intentional about it and aware of it. We're all very focused on the mission that we're on together as companies. When we brought our companies together, it's very complementary in terms of each company's products, and so now we're going to market with a full portfolio.
Awesome.
But
what a cool project.
Yeah,
I mean, that's a really cool project to bring those cultures together. And as you know, culture's the key, right? Like when you're doing that sort of M&A, consolidation, I don't know if you'd call it that, but bringing those companies together with that kind of purpose to be able to do it in such an international basis is a really neat project.
Absolutely.
Well done. Well done. I hope it succeeds, Fred. I hope it succeeds. So I think maybe zoom out now for the audience and maybe take a little step back to how you got to where you are today, right? Because you're originally from Denmark, right?
Correct. So I grew up in Denmark, just outside of Aarhus, which is the second largest city here.
Love Aarhus. Absolutely love Aarhus. At eBay, we had a pretty significant facility in Aarhus. So I've had the great pleasure of going there and visiting their amazing library. Really a really beautiful town. Highly recommend it. Side note. So how on earth did you get from Aarhus to Seattle, first of all?
So, sorry, we're going to have to cut that out. I first came to America as a foreign exchange student in high school, and I was with an organization where you could say which country you wanted to go to, but you had no say as to where in the United States you were going to go. And I was placed in a suburb to Minneapolis, Minnetonka, and went to high school there. And towards the end of that year, I met a very lovely young lady, and we stayed in touch for a few years, and then decided to try to spend more time together. And so I'd returned to Denmark, did my undergraduate degree in business at Copenhagen Business School. Part of that, I returned to Minnesota for a semester, and we decided to get married at that time. Fairly young age, but green card was a requirement for us to be able to be in the same place. And so that was it. came to America permanently then in 2007. There's financial crisis, so with a undergraduate degree in business and no work experience, things got a little tough. And I ended up working at an intellectual property law firm as a kind of case manager, paralegal,
Right on.
and got introduced to a bunch of great lawyers who were working at that law firm, and learned how they solve problems. A lot of patent prosecution, but also licensing work, and got some exposure to that, and really liked how they're, the kind of the legal analysis of it and the problem solving aspects, and how you're working with your clients to solve, in that case, the IP challenges that they had in front of them, or the revenue opportunities that they had from that portfolio. And so decided based on that, slow economy, MBAs were not in demand, and went to law school instead, and figured I could use a law degree to go into business if I didn't like practicing law. So I did that. I did a lot of IP related work, but with a business degree, couldn't do IP prosecution in the United States, and got involved in transactional work instead, and had the opportunity to join a relatively small firm out of law school that had a good health IT practice, and started out doing that, and had the first partner I worked for, my first mentor, Ray, really, helped me get set up for success by having me be a fly on the wall and learn the craft from the ground up without worrying about billable hours, without having to do kind of basic work that associates often gets charged with. And got to participate in deal work right away for complex IT, especially for health insurance and hospitals. And so that was my start and introduction to that, and grew relatively quickly. Like, I was afforded that opportunity to really apply my trade and learn hands-on, and be exposed to client work from day one, and was able to turn that work into quite a bit of deals on my own part as well. So complex IT, back then it was application service provider arrangements. I don't think that exists any longer. I don't know what you call it today, private cloud.
You and me both, dude.
Yeah.
You and me both.
And then evolved further into a lot of business process outsourcing work. Again, a lot in health insurance space in the U.S., working on care management, utilization management, outsourcing deals. And that took me through a process to develop, some really close relationships with my clients. And I think they saw how hard I worked. I think they saw how much I cared about learning their business. U.S. health insurance is very complex, and
Indeed,
you really have to get to the bottom of it to do, to structure those contracts for your clients. So eventually, one of my key clients recommended me and said, "Hey, I think you're ready for this opportunity. I know somebody on the board of Volpara Health, and they're looking for their first in-house legal leader, and you should go talk to them." And so I did, and we talked for a while, and eventually, this was during COVID. I think I was ready for a change. My daughter at the time was about 1, and private practice with young kids during COVID was definitely a challenge of its own. And I had this opportunity to go work with this really cool, fun growth stage company out of Wellington, New Zealand. It was a remote world anyways we were living at the time. And so I took the chance, and it was really to join them to build out their really the commercial side of the business first. Startup world, revenue is king. And so that was the initial legal goal, as well as how do we enable revenue growth from the U.S. customer base that had recently been acquired, and start, ensure that we can grow the company product portfolio into that base as well.
Right on. Nice. So basically, married your high school sweetheart, and then Kiwi company takes over the world.
Shorthand, yeah.
Good summary.
Yeah, yeah. So
with a whole lot of hard work in private practice in between. But I think the thing that really sticks out to me there, Fred, is the MBA and working in law you were before you even went to law school, right? Which I think probably gave you an understanding of business that a lot of fresh out of law school law students who take a more, I don't know if I want to call it traditional path, but sort of the standard
Mhm.
old school way maybe, just don't get, because they don't teach you anything about business in law school.
Yeah,
And I'm sure that's been beneficial, both in private practice and now in-house.
definitely helpful. I think it, my desire to go into law, right, was to solve problems, right? And that's still what we do every day. I can't say I went in to become a litigator or have aspirations of public office or anything like that, like some may in
Sure.
the U.S. It's really a very practical, hands-on way to serve, serve other companies in achieving their goals. And it's been a lot of fun doing that from a legal perspective. I think
Awesome.
once you get to the in-house side, that is the part that takes over, right? You are legal, or you are a business leader first, with the legal expertise.
Yep.
And that's definitely enabled me to take on both leadership within the business, but also in executing company strategy, but also in serving on our company's executive team and help guide the business overall.
Totally. So how have you seen, I mean, you've been at Volpara / Lunit for 5 and a bit years now, and then in private practice for however many years before that. How have you seen the role of the in-house lawyer, let's say, change over that time? And I know you have a lot of experience in the sort of, I don't know if I want to call it startup, but the sort of tech community
Yeah.
on the West Coast. How
So
have you seen it change?
I think with the disclaimers that I was never in a big company in-house legal team, and so I really can't speak to how they operate. I think the biggest change and the demand from especially a company in our space where we're AI, we're kind of old school AI company, right? We've been doing AI for over 10 years in a
Mm.
highly regulated space. We make
Yep.
medical device software. We process a lot of patient data, personal data as part of our products. Is that there's a natural risk mitigation component that has to be there, and that's table stakes, but it's not what drives the business. And the more you grow, right? We started a New Zealand company, entered the U.S. market. Now, as a group, our software is in 65 plus countries, and so building a scalable program that mitigates risk has its own challenges, but compliance doesn't drive revenue. And so, from our perspective, we have investors. Volpara had its investor base. Lunit as a group is listed as well. And that is always the goal, that the primary goal that my role drives towards is enabling that revenue growth. And so I think traditional risk mitigation, being there to provide the perfect answer or the best legal answer, is probably changing now, at least from that. If you're looking at the U.S. kind of West Coast legal lens, right? That is the function of the legal team is different than what you had 20 years ago, where it was to mitigate the risk and be there to provide warnings on every single risk that could arise. Whereas now it's our job to filter those and to present the really important ones and to guide decisions around them and to help understand how we can build the business operationally and how we serve our customers in a way where we stay within the lines, but we've made conscious decisions to go as fast as we can and enable the company's overall strategy.
For sure. Yeah. Well, and I think also with a product and a purpose as valuable as what you guys are doing, it's probably good for all of us that you're able to bring that to market in as many places as possible, right? With an understanding that you're doing it the right way. But I think it's great. So you have that understanding of being a business person with legal skills who's really, driving business strategy and doing it in a way that's scalable, you know, operationally, management, leadership, et cetera. Um, and you're brought to, uh, well, you wanted to go to Europe, right? Like, of course. And you're you're bringing that way of leading a legal function, building and leading a legal function into the European context. Have you, and we've talked about this. We've talked about this on stage in Amsterdam. So have you seen a difference in the way things were done in the sort of continental European context? Do you feel like there's, or maybe even the Korean context?
Yeah.
What's your view on that?
No, I definitely think culturally, as it's natural, there are differences in approach, both to, in general, to how you operate businesses, how you make decisions, but also how you manage risk. I think the U.S. approach is more fast-paced, more direct, more comfortable with making decisions quickly and iterating on those decisions, compared to like what you have in Korea. And culturally, there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. Decisions are made differently, and stakeholder management is different, and you have to follow a different process for that.
Sure.
For Europe, I think you're probably a little bit in between. I do think compared to the U.S., there's more. Say in the U.S., people are more comfortable with the rapid pace of change compared to Europe.
Sure.
And I think the risk tolerance wise, both from the statutory and regulatory environment, but also from a legal approach, there's a higher risk tolerance, right? The U.S. is an easier market, so to speak, to operate within, in part because the regulations have stagnated a little bit in the U.S., and Europe is further ahead. And the regulators in Europe are trying to anticipate more risks and are implementing regulations around that quicker. And that definitely constrains the ability in some aspects for us to move quite as fast in Europe.
Yes.
And I'm not going to pass judgment on what is right or wrong, but in the medical device space, and with the EU AI Act and the ongoing implementation we're facing right now, it definitely slows down how quickly we can move in a country like Europe, even if we want to apply the U.S. pace.
Sure. Well, I mean, I think it's, as I've said already in this episode, a fascinating situation to be on the cutting edge of AI and medical technology across those jurisdictions is just a really neat place to be. So I'm really glad we get to talk about it. I think for me, and this is what we spoke about at the Crafty Counsel European conference when we were up on stage there. The culture of what I think of as modern, effective in-house legal leadership appears to me to be moving at a pretty fast pace into the continental European market. The expectation, even from 2 years ago, if you look at job descriptions and if you look at for legal leadership roles, and if you look at who is posting them, who's driving them, things are definitely changing. And I think you're right there on the front end of that change, right? Like you're somebody who I'd say was, right in the core of modern legal leadership on the West Coast of the U.S. And now you're sitting in Copenhagen at an international level. So I think it's really great to see that, and for everybody who's in that market to be able to point it at you and say, like, this is how it's done, right? This is what not just we as lawyers would like to see, hopefully, but it's also what leadership teams, particularly CEOs and boards, would like to see, because it's the way that you drive business success.
Absolutely. I think a key to that is really, as a lawyer, coming in and understanding the business all around. Um,
Yep.
with my team, I talk about knowing the business as well as the CEO.
Mm.
That's a goal. That's not,
We'll make
the
a shirt that
standard.
says that, Fred.
And so that means that you build up and you give your team the opportunity, especially as they onboard them, but also over time to really spend time with sales, with finance, with tax, HR, product engineering, regardless of the role on the legal team, so that they understand the business from all aspects when they're advising the
Yep.
business, but also so that they build those relationships across the business and have those relationships to pull on. Unless you are a large company or a scale up with lots of resources, it's very likely your legal team is not that big, and so you have to make the most
Sure.
of your resources. And that comes in through in a couple of ways, to me at least. It comes in being able to leverage the rest of the business to help accomplish your work.
Mm.
We work a lot every single day with sales, with finance, um, with our information security teams, right? Our regulatory and quality teams, and so on, to accomplish, legal priorities overall, right? But it also helps once you can convert that business knowledge. That's where you can have a real legal impact in terms of the rest of the business, right? Where you can say, demonstrate that legal is supporting the overall business objectives, right? So if you can implement structures that reduce the overall sales cycle because we've improved the contracting workflow and the templates and how it fits in with kind of from the initial marketing lead to post go live customer success, right? If we can optimize that, then we will go a lot faster from lead generation to revenue recognition. It can be going faster on product development processes, especially in a highly regulated space like ours, where we have SOPs, coming out our nose in terms of quality management and data governance and so on.
Yep.
And just be overall quicker decision making, right? That helps leadership teams move faster overall within the business. And so I think that's probably one of the bigger shifts that you're seeing, and it sounds like coming across more in Europe now is that the lawyers are need to have that broader understanding to be effective, and are expected
Yep.
by the CEOs, the CFOs, the boards that are hiring them to be able to step in and participate with that level of understanding.
100%. Yeah, yeah. I mean, what we talked about in Amsterdam and what I'm absolutely seeing from headhunters and recruiters across the planet, but including in continental Europe, is vision, purpose, leadership skills, the ability to drive change. I think in a positive way to get the team on board, and that includes the broader team. And I'd like to talk to you about that in a sec. But also what you're talking about, which is building, I think, the engine room for both the legal function and the business. That and I've said this a million times. If legal goes faster, the whole business goes faster, because we're one of the strongest limiters, especially in a regulated space, on the pace of the business. Right? If you have to wait for legal to understand what you're doing before they get back to you, that is really going to slow things down. Ideally, there's some kind of process which doesn't involve legal, right? Like, not everybody wants to spend their day with us.
Exactly.
They would like to get their stuff done. But if they do need to meet with us, and hopefully, that goes well, we understand what the business is doing, right? And obviously with an MBA in your pocket, you have a really good sense of that. So I think my question to you, Fred, is if you're trying to, and let's just say we're speaking to the, whatever, maybe it's the continental European audience here, right? If we're trying to do some change management in an organization that has operated with legal in a more traditional stance, how do you communicate to your business leaders that this is going to be a positive change to move to a more modern, effective approach?
So first a correction. I don't have an MBA.
Okay. It feels like you do.
I definitely feel like I'm taking a couple of graduate kind of degrees of my time working in U.S.
A
with U.S.
practical MBA
healthcare
then.
and medical device software. Um, so to your question, what I and my team focus on is accomplishing the goals of the business, and that's what we measure ourselves on at the end of the day.
Yep.
That that the OKRs for the business are accomplished. That the high level, OKRs are accomplished, and that we help enable those. And I think that's where you build value. I've had the benefit now. I haven't been with the business for 5 years, and so we've helped build out from day one with our CFO, then CFO, now CEO, how a lot of that, how the customer contracting, for example, sits within the overall
Sure.
revenue generation process. Um, and but if you're starting from scratch today, depending on the business you're in, focus on what are the key things that are make or break the business, and how do you enable those to be achieved faster or with fewer resources, right? Those kind of two
Sure.
levers, key levers most businesses look at is how do we make money quicker, and how much money do we spend in the process, right? That's very
Yep.
very crude breakdown. But at the end of the day, most of the conversations I have with our finance team, with our CEO, comes down to those pieces.
Yep. So understanding the real business drivers, and to be clear, not the legal ones necessarily, right? And then communicate. I mean, even that alone is building trust with your business leaders, that understanding, as you said, the OKRs, the strategic goals of the business are what's important to legal, as opposed to we're here to give you another esoteric memo and tell you can't do something.
Right. And of course, some things are table stakes, and you have to have those, build that foundation with your company, with your leadership team, to ensure that
Absolutely.
those are taken care of.
Yeah.
I think the U.S. approach, right, it is very much pressure testing each element of that along the way to figure out what's the right, balance, what's the risk tolerance, what enables you to go as fast as possible, and which risks, once you've had a discussion about them, can be accepted, and you can either work to achieve them at a later date, or accept that you have those risks within the business. I think that definitely, when you look at culturally between different parts of the world, I think something you have to balance out. Then that again, once you're engaging with additional parts of the world, and keep in mind that you may have made a decision that worked for one region, but it's not fit as well once you either enter a new market or have a new partnership or relationship that is part of your business
Totally.
at a later time. So that's one, definitely, yeah. We're living and breathing that with the AI regulations coming online right now, and figuring out
Yep.
what works in Europe, what's required in Korea, what's required in Australia, the U.S. on that front is very much, it's more at the state level at the moment. Not really anything federally. And so building programs, for example, in that space requires a lot of rebalancing of risk tolerance as each kind of regulation comes online.
Huh. Oh, that's fascinating. Well, everybody knows who to call if they want to talk about
If you
AI
want to-
regulation, particularly in regards to medical, highly regulated spaces. I think we both have an interest in AI, legal technology, engine rooms, things like that. And I know you have a concern about, as I do, how I guess you can say younger. It's okay to say younger. Younger, more junior people build their skill sets in the legal profession, particularly in house. What are your thoughts on that currently?
So yeah, we're still, we're definitely not shying away from using AI. We are a small team. We're trying to figure out how do we have the biggest impact possible, right? And I think one of the things we as lawyers bring with us, especially from law school, and probably those of us that were brought up in the law firm world some time ago, is this quest for perfection, right? Is that we have to know everything, get to the bottom of it, put in the extra 5 hours to make sure that we know, it's correct, and then provide at the time a very long memo setting out everything, full analysis, all the case law, all the
Yep.
references, right? That definitely doesn't work in-house, legal teams today. But the thoroughness of the analysis and knowing your subject matter and knowing the kind of the building blocks, whether if it's a compliance program or your contracts that you have in place, customers, your suppliers, and so on. I think that is incredibly important. And so we're trying to be very intentional about where we use AI and when we use AI, especially for contract analysis and markups and so on, because I don't want my team members to have this kind of synthetic relationship with the work that they do. It's very easy to query. There's some great tools out there today, truly, truly great tools come on, especially in the last 12 months. We use some of those today, in addition to some of the general purpose models that are also doing a decent job. Some teams are using them. But yeah, I think legal teams really should focus on where's the high impact use of it, but also how do you ensure that the team members you have that maybe out of law school, been out of law school that long, still do the foundational work and still learn from the bottom up each component of a contract or a compliance program, so that they have that knowledge with them. They can apply it when they get the output from the AI, that they understand how to analyze it properly, when to still do the issue spotting, so to speak, for your
Yep.
for your answers, so that you can still leverage that output to go as fast as possible. I don't think the expectation from the rest of business is going to be AI is used and AI makes them go faster. They have access to tools that they can ask to draft contracts now as well, whether they it's a good idea or not. Sometimes it can be helpful to see how they've thought about a specific issue, and because that will be built into what they bring to the table in terms of what maybe a Copilot or ChatGPT has prepared for them. But the expectation is definitely there, right? That things move faster.
Yep.
And so that, I think, is a key challenge is in managing your team development, to still foster that really thorough approach to the practice of law and the foundational that are part of it, without going into the expectations that I think we have of perfection is not helpful in and out.
Sure.
So,
Yeah. Well, I think we have a really big gap in our profession, because the law schools and maybe even the law firms, although they seem to be slowly getting on board, they have never really, like you talk about, contracts, just contracts, right? Compliance program, like what's that, right? But contracts alone, I don't know if you ever looked at any contracts in law school. I had one class where we actually looked at some contracts, which got pulled halfway through the semester, which ended up, of course, being the core of my practice as a commercial lawyer, right? So to take people from that environment where they're really not learning the job to a law firm where they're probably not doing as much of that, and then taking them in-house and being like, here's a tool that'll do it for you,
right.
without you actually knowing what it's doing. I can't think of another profession. You wouldn't take doctors and say, hey, here's a tool that can do it for you, without teaching them what the thing is that's looking for, the traditional method, et cetera, and doing that in a really, in kind of intense way to ensure that they were able to, I think, call bullshit is the phrase I would use, right? I think one of the biggest challenges with AI is it is so authoritative, that unless you have a pretty strong sense of what is correct and right, and to prompt in a way that says, give me the citations, and assume. I've seen some guidance about always assume it's incorrect, always prompt for check it again. You know what I mean? Unless you have all of those things lined up, it's going to be very difficult for you to say categorically, this is as good as the work I would do.
Exactly.
Um,
Exactly. I think that, there's a time component to it, of course. Like, the longer you spend negotiating contracts, the more scenarios you're going to see. You're going to learn from that. You're going to see how different clauses play out for you.
yep.
But also the AI is not going to give you that. At least I haven't seen it kind of give that level of input, of saying, that kind of risk advice that we as lawyers naturally have. Say, hey, I think this is the best way to do it, but just keep in mind, these three other things could potentially play
Yep.
in if we do it this way, right?
Yeah.
So I think you're
Sort
right.
of the context.
In business, right? We're very used to people, being frequently wrong and never in doubt. And I think that's where AI is a bit right now too. But it's not going to tell you it's not
Indeed.
in doubt. And I've definitely had kind of prompting discussions with AIs, trying to you need to tell me when you're in doubt, and it doesn't seem to stick.
No.
But,
No.
work in
I think
progress. There's some
that's
great
one of the
people out
most
there.
fascinating. Yeah, it's one of the most fascinating parts of this whole transformation that we're going through, is this idea that you could say, prompt for something, do this piece of research, show me the citations. Oh, well, show me the documents. And like, what do you mean, show me the documents? You did the research, right? Like, so I think it's a fascinating time. Well, Fred, I really appreciate you spending the time to chat with me today, especially in the evening in balmy Copenhagen. And I think the space that you're in, it's been great to see you, go through the sort of journey that you've been through, coming over to the U.S., doing the work here, and then taking that approach to legal leadership over to Copenhagen and internationally. I think it's a really fascinating story. And I wish you, of course, and Lunit the best of luck in taking what I think is a really, really valuable product to the market as soon as possible and as broadly as possible. So yeah, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, David. My pleasure.
And to everybody out there, we'll see you on the next Legal Leaders podcast. So see you then. Thanks for joining us.